In this video, I'm going to show you the easiest and quickest way to replace your skies using Luminar 4's AI sky replacement. We're going to compare it to Photoshop, and then on top of that, I'm going to give you all 5 tips on how to do it convincingly in every one of your photographs. So let's dive in. What's up, guys? My name is Pi. Welcome to SLR Lounge. If you guys are new here, this is your place for no-nonsense education, created by working professionals, but designed for everyone. Now, this video is indeed a sponsored video. We want to thank Luminar for sponsoring this content, but here's the deal. We don't take on any sponsorships unless it's stuff that we actually use. And by the end of this, you'll know why we use Luminar 4. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're talking about replacing skies in our photographs. And I have an image pulled up here inside of Photoshop as well as Luminar 4 because I want to show you guys kind of the issue and where we're currently at when it comes to replacing skies. When it comes to replacing skies, really our best bet is we have to somehow make a selection of the actual sky itself, right? And this is a fairly complex image. Like, we have these trees up here, we have trees on the right side, and so we can't just use the lasso tool, we can't use magic wand, we can't do any of that. What we can do, and probably our best bet, is to use the select color range option, right? And what we do is we'd select a color range and hold down shift to basically drag it across that color range and capture some of these blues. But what you quickly start to notice, and I'm going to go ahead and just click right here, and we're going to hold down shift and kind of drag up. What you quickly start to notice is that other areas of the image begin to become selected. So we're actually catching some of the snow. And in a shot like this, where you actually have blues being reflected on other areas, this doesn't actually work all that well. We can change the fuzziness to kind of include different areas, and we can kind of land some around here, press OK, and we get a selection, right? But if I go to my layers and actually jump this to a new layer, what you'll notice is that we have quite a bit of the mountains and the ground actually selected in that. So when we go and we swap out the sky, we have to do quite a bit of manipulation to kind of get everything to blend correctly inside of Photoshop. On an easy image, this might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes inside of Photoshop. On a more difficult image, this could be 20, 30 minutes per photograph trying to get a good, convincing sky replacement and mask. Okay, so flipping over to Luminar, I now have that exact same photograph, and watch this. I'm going to show you the exact process inside of Luminar. You go to the creative panel, AI sky replacement, and then you just select your sky. So I might start with, let's say, dramatic sunset, and I'm going to pick one of these, okay? And immediately it does a very good job of not only blending it into the photograph, it's done several different steps, right? We're talking just choosing the sky, and already it's blended colors, it's matched and blended behind the leaves of the tree. In fact, I can zoom in here, and what in the heck is going on here? I don't know what kind of AI devilry is happening behind the scenes right now, but it has flawlessly blended every single like little pine needle into this. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm using a lot of hand gestures right now because it still surprises me even this moment. So all we have to do from here is kind of tweak and tune to get to a good look. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. We're going to go through from Lightroom all the way through to Luminar because that's kind of our workflow. I'm going to show you exactly how this is done. But first, I wanted you to see just how powerful this is, because we did another video on Luminar 4's AI portrait retouching abilities, and those simple AI retouch plus the AI sky replacement in and of themselves, in my opinion, warrant the price of the software. It just will save you a grip of time. So now with that, let's go ahead now and dive in and actually work through some images. So we're going to work through a couple different images, and we're going to do some creative, wacky things too. Let's go ahead and start with this photograph right here, and I'm going to go full screen to kind of knock everything else out. All right, so with this image selected, my first step in our workflow is to dial in your look inside of Lightroom. You guys can use your own presets, you guys can develop manually, whatever you want to do, but dial in your look. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, we use Visual Flow presets. These are the presets that we develop that are based on lighting condition. This image is a high dynamic range kind of scene, so I'm going to select from the modern pack HDR. What this is going to do is basically kind of do everything for me. All I have to do from here is adjust my exposure, kind of get to the right temperature. I'm going to leave it right about here and adjust contrast if I so choose. But that's really it. It's doing everything else for me. I might also add a radial burn onto the image, but all I want you guys to do is dial in the exact look that you want for your image first. That's going to be our first step. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and right click and go edit in and click Luminar 4 to jump into Luminar 4. These are the settings that I have by default because I really don't need 16-bit depth. The resolution is 300. I want it to be in JPEG just to keep file size down rather than using TIFFs. So we're going to go ahead and click edit and jump now into Luminar. So step 1 is completed. We've dialed in our look. Now we're into Luminar. Now inside of Luminar, we go to step 2. Now what I want to do is in step 2, it's all about picking a set of clouds that matches the scene. Okay, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and go to the creative panel, AI sky replacement, and you'll notice that Luminar comes preloaded with all these different skies, right? But the beauty is that you can actually load custom sky images. Probably my favorite library of custom skies is Fstopper's Mike Kelly sky library. So check that out. We're going to include a link below to that as well. It has just awesome and incredible high resolution skies that are absolutely awesome. So you can choose any of these preloaded ones, but what we're going to run into is if we select a sky that really just doesn't fit the environment and the mood of the scene, it's not going to fit. Regardless of the AI replacement, it's just not going to look quite right? So looking at the original image is a sunset photograph, right? The sun is on the horizon line, so I kind of want to choose a sunset image. The next thing that I want to do is make sure that the light in that sky of the cloud that I choose is coming from roughly the same direction as the light in this scene. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to dramatic sunset number 1. Let's look at sunset 1, and this one looks pretty good, and you'll notice that the sky is actually lit in the same area that our sun is actually in. So that's good right there. Sunset number 2. Well, looks cool, but the sun is right up here versus our sunlight comes from down here. So again, we're not going to get a convincing look if we select that. This one's nice. Again, we have a sky that looks like it's being lit from the bottom left side. And I like the overall look of this. So we have a sky that's selected now where the light in the scene matches the light direction of our image, right? What I'm going to do now is go to step 3. Now, step 3 is to begin tweaking our settings to get the sky to blend. And there's some key pieces here that I want to mention. So number 1, you can actually flip the sky right here. If you open up advanced settings, if the sky light, if the direction of that light is coming from the opposite side of the image, you can actually easily just flip it right there. So I'm going to turn that off because our sky is coming from the right place. And let's just work our way down through these different settings. Horizon blending is basically the graduation of that blend, right? Of the horizon line in the sky. So what I'm going to do first, and what I like to do, is usually adjust my sky position. And you can notice that the sun is actually coming from almost the exact place of where it was in our shot. So I'm going to bring this down about right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and increase the blend. So we kind of basically are just going to click and drag to make it softly blend as it goes down into the horizon line. Okay, and that magical wonder Luminar, whatever's happening behind the scenes, it's detecting where that actual horizon line is, even though it can't see it. What the heck, guys? What is happening to the world of photography? I don't understand. Okay, so now relight scene. This is where I'll usually adjust this a bit down, but basically what relight is doing is it's adjusting the light in the scene to sort of match the tone of the sky. This is doing color blending, essentially, that you would do in Photoshop to make sure that whatever sky you use kind of reflects its color onto the other areas of the scene. But here, we don't need to do anything crazy. We just adjust a slider. Usually I end up dialing this down to like 10 to 15. And we'll get to a kind of more nuanced look in just a moment. But Sky Global is going to be another one of those adjustments that kind of affects the way that it's going to blend with the surrounding objects in the scene. So these are one of those sliders that I kind of usually just will slide up and down to get to a desired look. One of these things, and I'm hoping that Luminar will do this with future versions, is some of the naming on these things I feel like might make sense to them, but to users it might not make as much sense. Like Sky Global, it's a little bit difficult to kind of guess what that's doing. So close gaps is generally going to basically close the gaps around foreground elements and objects. So usually I'll tweak this again up or down just to kind of get it to blend nicely. If you start seeing artifacts, then you're going to pull it back to where kind of it was. So I'm going to pull it back actually maybe to like 5 and see if it gives me any artifacts up here. Okay, and we get a little bit right there. These will mostly disappear once I get my blend exactly spot on. So let me show you what I'm going to do there. Sky Local is again another blending kind of utility that's going to help us to blend the image. Again, I'm hoping for kind of better, more descriptive names for each of these pieces as we kind of go. But we're going to zoom in and you can kind of see as we adjust this up or down exactly what it's doing. Right now it's kind of touching and hitting some of the mountain, whereas when we pull it back, it does a better job kind of blending and letting go of that edge. Okay, now sky defocus is important because if you're shooting at a shallow depth of field, you actually want to defocus the sky if the sky in the natural image would be slightly defocused. But here's the deal, in this image, it really wouldn't be, and we can tell that because the mountain, by and large, is pretty dang sharp. Because we're shooting this wide, we're not gonna get a very shallow depth of field. So I wanna be very careful here because if you start blurring in an area that you shouldn't, it's gonna look very non-convincing. Even at 1 right now, it doesn't quite look right, okay? So we're gonna leave this as 0 for the sky defocus. And if it doesn't quite load the preview, just click in and click out to get it to load. So this is the fun stuff. This atmospheric haze slider, this was added from a bit of consulting that I did with the Skylum team, the Luminar team. So they were sitting in our studio and I said, you know, it'd be really great if we had a way to kind of blend the opacity on these skies, because that's really the big area where I feel like people blend a sky in too strong. They showed me the exposure and the temperature, and I was like, that's good, but we again need to adjust opacity as well. They went back, and within like 2 weeks, they had developed the atmospheric haze, which does just that. So this is one of those big pieces where we're gonna blend back the sky to something that's a little bit more realistic. So this is step number 4, and I do this on every single image. It's tone it back. Less is more. You want to match the overall kind of brightness and look of that sky to the brightness and level of the scene. So in an image like this that's fairly bright to start with, well, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my exposure up quite a bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and dial the atmospheric haze slider, which again, why don't we just call it opacity? I'm going to keep dialing this up until you notice it starts to get a very realistic blend in the image. Right about here, okay? I can also tweak the sky temperature if I want to, but I kind of like where it's at. I might even bring it a little bit higher to like 90. This is the big piece of that less is more. Getting a convincing look is really about getting it to that right level of brightness for your particular photograph. This is where I'll oftentimes re-look at the relight scene option, because the relight scene currently, I believe, is kind of blending based on a very sort of, I want to say kind of darker opacity sky, right? For a more dramatic sky. So I don't want it to blend for that. I want it to blend for something that's very subtle. And so I usually dial it back to like 5-ish. Okay, so this looks fantastic. And this is that place where I would finalize any subtle fine tuning that I need to get the blend to be just right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So looking at this artifacting right here, I'm starting to get rid of that artifacting when I take my sky global up and then I take my close gaps up. And I'm gonna keep going right until it kind of disappears. And I usually like to make these tweaks at the end after adjusting everything else, because once you've adjusted everything else, that's when you're really gonna know for sure that you've dialed it in correctly. Now this is great. I'm gonna click apply now. It's gonna export the image back to Lightroom. So with that done, I'm gonna go back to Lightroom. Here's the final image. It looks absolutely awesome. I'm gonna show you kind of a bonus tip. I love doing this thing that I call twice baking, or refried beans. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna actually reprocess the image, and I'm gonna use one of our presets again. So I'm gonna just select soft light once again, And this go around, I'm just gonna adjust the temperature and the tint to where I want it. Right about here, adjust my exposure. And you can choose kind of exactly how you want to twice bake your photograph. But essentially what we're doing is we're adding a second layer of adjustments now. I'm gonna pull in a radial burn right over my subjects and kind of deepen that burn a little bit and go back and just tweak the temperature a little bit. And now with the temperature right here, I might just grab that saturation a little bit on the skin tones and just pull skin tones back just a little bit, pull the reds back just a tiny bit, and then pull the blues back a little bit. So we kind of make these subtle fine-tuning adjustments and go back and reprocess the photograph. So this is how it came back into Lightroom, and it looks great here. We could take this and just brighten it. We could do a whole bunch of different things. But I love doing this inside of Lightroom because I'm honestly still preferring Lightroom's kind of raw processing tools to Luminar 4's tools. So I like to bring it back to Lightroom, make final tweaks and adjustments for those images that really are just standout images. So now let's go back and process something else, because I want to show you guys kind of a different set of images. So this was an engagement photograph. Let's go over here and let's just do a landscape shot. So I'm gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go a little bit quicker this time. So I'm gonna just go ahead and apply soft light, get it to somewhere that looks decent, and take this straight over to Luminar. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to our creative panel, AI sky replacement. Now here's the fun part is, yes, I could go with something like a little more toned back. I can choose any one of these skies, and look how fantastic of a job this thing does. It's kind of crazy. Like, I don't understand what's happening here. It's fine. I'm gonna use all of these computational tools to get my job done better and faster, because frankly, it's just awesome. So I could go with something like this, and I could flip it, and it looks absolutely awesome as is. I think that looks incredible. But what if I want to do something a little more wacky? Could I actually get, like, say, a starry night to blend with this image? And I believe I could. So let's pick one. I'm gonna go with this one because the light source in the image sort of matches up. And let's see if we can get this to look like a long exposure at night where the mountains are sort of our moon, that they're lit by the moon, right? So what I'm gonna do is actually go back to this lighting image right here. And I'm gonna actually adjust down the mountainside to kind of cool it off. Okay, so we're gonna get to kind of a more, just kind of a more nighttime look to the image. And that looks great. Now what we're gonna do is go back to the AI sky replacement. I'm gonna go ahead and just, it already did a good job of choosing where to blend. So I don't really need to do too much there. Okay, so with this, I'm gonna go ahead and just adjust. So this relight scene is kind of tweaking the color of the scene, right? To kind of match the sky. It looks fine where it's at actually. But what I'm gonna do first is just begin to go back to this adjustment of the exposure as well as the atmospheric haze. Because again, like if we were to do a long exposure like this, it's unlikely that if the mountains are that bright that your sky is gonna be, you know, that dark. So I'm gonna bring this up and kind of tone it back. Okay, now I can kind of see, all right, from here, do I wanna adjust the temperature a little bit? And I kind of do wanna adjust it down just a little bit. All right, I don't wanna do any defocusing. I think that looks fine right there. I do wanna kind of make some tweaks to the way that it's blending right now with everything. So I'm just gonna go and play with my close gaps sliders. That looks good. It's crazy that it's even catching the snow that's coming off of this and saying like that should be in the photograph. That's pretty trippy. Okay, let's take this all the way up. Yeah, I kind of feel like the sky global should be mostly up. Yeah, right about there. Okay, and we're gonna reduce the, let's see. Actually, we're gonna relight the scene to 25. Now this looks cool. Okay, so don't be upset, landscape photographers. I understand. Software is ruining your art. I'm just kidding. It's just making your art better, easier. Embrace it. Embrace it for what it is. You guys don't have to go stand out in those cold nights anymore. Now we're back in Lightroom. I'm gonna twice bake this without doing any presets. I'm just gonna brighten up the image. I'm gonna add a little bit more contrast. I might, let's see, tweak and tune the white balance just a little bit. Just a bit. Add a little more magentas. I love my magentas. My magentas make me happy. Some of y'all are like, his stuff is too pink. No, I like my magentas. Okay, add a little bit of clarity, maybe put a little texture, you know, all that good. I'm even gonna do a little bit of dehaze in this. It's gonna help me to kind of pull and blend things in just a little bit more. Now, from here, I'm gonna go ahead and start grabbing my graduated filter, and we're gonna use this to kind of pull down the top of the sky a little bit. We're gonna also use it to kind of bring down the bottom of the mountain a little bit. And what the heck do we have here? I mean, that's kind of crazy. It opens up this world of just creativity to you for doing whatever the heck you want with your photographs. Just understand, the purists and photojournalists may be upset with you, but that's a small price to pay. I mean, come on now. So same thing with this type of photograph. I want to do this last one with Shiv. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and reset this out and just show you guys. I'm going to apply Soft Light Modern. That's just it's going to do most of the work for us in terms of the raw processing. I'm going to get it to roughly the level of brightness and contrast. And this is a great image to show because it really shows to the less is more kind of approach to these edits. Okay, so again, if we were to try and make this selection in Photoshop, it gets tricky. It gets a little bit difficult to make it realistic. We're going to spend quite a bit of time there. But once we're into the creative panel, I'm going to go ahead and select out a sky. Which one do I want? Dramatic sky? No, I want dramatic. I want a sunset. Let's check it out. Sunset 1, sunset 2, meh. Sunset 3. Oh, another thing would be cool is if there was thumbnails in here. Ooh, I like the dramatic sunset 1. 2 is a ixnay on the number 2. Let's go for 4. Ah, 4 is cool. Okay. So the light direction is kind of coming from the same place. It got the horizon blending and position down. I'm just going to increase the blend. Because again, I feel like usually on a horizon line, especially with the ocean, you kind of have that haze. It's a little bit stronger, right? This is one of those images where I need to incorporate some of that defocus. So let's go ahead and go to the advanced settings first before I start worrying about anything else. I'm going to pull up the exposure and the atmospheric haze quite a bit because again, this is all about getting to roughly the same brightness as the original image, right? So the original image is very, very bright. So I don't want a sky that is very dark and dramatic. It's going to be the first thing that just doesn't fit when you're like all the way down here and you're like, oh, that just looks like he's replaced it. Now, the next thing that stands out to me is this defocus. I have to get that defocus in and looking kind of nice and realistic. And right about here at 20-ish, it gets me to a good place, right? Where it kind of has that same level of defocus as everything else in the shot. This is nutso. I mean, I would be doing so many layers inside of Photoshop in just what is a matter of a couple sliders here. So next thing I'm gonna do is go back to Sky Global, and now I'm gonna tweak my blend, okay? I'm gonna go all the way back and then go kind of somewhere in between and get to about here. I'm gonna check out my closed gaps. I'm gonna leave that all the way up so we get a nice blend on everything. Sky Local, let's see what this is doing. This is again kind of affecting the blend. And again, I kind of like it. I don't want it to be over a skin. So you can notice that if we take this up too high, it starts to blend over the skin. So somewhere around the default, maybe even backing it down a little bit is good. Okay, so this looks great. Now you'll notice there's a slight issue right here. We have a couple other tools that can help us to refine the mask. So all we gotta do is go to Edit Mask, select a radial, sorry, not a radial mask, a radial, just a brush. I'm crazy, I can't even talk right now. You can use your brackets to increase the size of this brush, and all I'm gonna do is go to the erase. Usually I like to lower the opacity a bit, and what I'm gonna do is just click right over this area where that flare is kind of coming through and sort of blend that little bit off. And all I'm doing is blending that off while also kind of reducing the blend a little bit on the other areas, okay? And you can also use this to take the opacity down even further if you'd like. So if I wanted to, I could just kind of bring the opacity down to like maybe 10, and then I could paint this over everything up here to kind of just bring everything down a little bit more, right? Just to kind of, less is more. Now at this point, this is where I would save it. I think it looks fantastic where it's at. I'm gonna check the relight too. So I'm gonna reduce relight just a little bit. Click done. And by the way, if you've done this for one photograph and you want to replace the skies in the other images in the scene, all you do is once you finish, save it as a new look. Save it as a look and then apply the exact same sky replacement to the other images. And now you don't have to go through all the settings again. That's it. So all I'm going to do is click apply. All right, so we're back in the Lightroom. I'm just going to reapply soft light one more time and then just adjust my tint and temperature a little bit to about right there. Add in a radial burn. Look at this crazy sauce. Okay, add in a little more contrast. We have an image that just looks like it pops, and we have this cool sky that's blended nearly perfectly. Okay, so look at these befores and afters. Check this out. So here is our shot of Shivani. That looks rad. Okay. And then here is our creative, wacky nighttime shot that we converted into a nighttime image with the Milky Way behind it. Don't kill me. And then here is our Banff shot. This was shot at -20, by the way. That's a whole nother video we're going to have to talk about. So much fun, so easy. I'm hoping you guys see the potential of this software. We're going to include links for it below. Once again, thank you to Skylum for allowing us to show our users just how powerful this software is. Thank you for creating the software. It's pretty awesome. Be sure to also check out our other video on Luminar 4's AI portrait retouching, because that one's awesome too. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, I would love for you guys to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. In addition, we have a free community that's all about Lightroom education and post-production that you can join on Facebook. We will link that as well below. Also, if you guys want A to Z training when it comes to everything photography, from posing to shooting to mastering manual mode to post-production, check out srloungeworkshops.com. We have the most comprehensive gold standard library of professional education to get you all anywhere you want to go in your photography career. My name is Pi. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.